I will call us to order. This is the fifth meeting for the Capital Planning Advisory Board. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Senator Southworth.
Here.
Representative Lawrence.
Here.
Pat Abel.
Here.
Rocky Adkins. Charles Byers. Jacqueline Coleman. Katie Comstock.
Here.
Carol Henderson.
Here.
John Hicks.
Here.
Brian Hicks.
Here.
Patsy Jackson. Holly Johnson. Ryan Neff. Danny Rhodes. Senator Wheeler.
Here.
And Representative Tate presiding.
Here, which we have a quorum. Great, thank you very much. Great. So do I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Do any members object? Any questions, concerns? All right, the minutes will stand as approved. All right, and the next section is information items. The following information items were shared with board members via email on August 22nd and detail the process used to select the board's project recommendations that will be incorporated into the 2024 through 2030 statewide capital planning improvement plans. The project recommendation instructions, the criteria listing and scoring matrix, and the scoring system. We ask that all project recommendations be shared with board staff by Wednesday, September 20th to provide time to finalize the draft capital plan for final vote and approval in our last meeting, which is on October 11th. Are there any questions or discussions for this process? Because this ranking and rating is totally new. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to thank the staff for their hard work, obviously, on putting this together. I know we discussed these ideas over the last few years, and seeing it take shape is very nice. So thanks so much, especially considering we have new staff.
That's right. Yeah, I do appreciate that. Thank you very much, Senator. I appreciate the efforts as well. You know, whenever I looked at this, I would always like to compare historical information and to understand what was in the minds of other people in the past. And without this ranking and rating, I found it very difficult to just go through all the mountains of material. So I certainly appreciate the efforts. Thank you very much. Anyone else have any questions? As we go through and start working through this matrix, I understand that there probably will be more questions when we start diving into it. And obviously feel free to contact Liz if there are any questions, or myself, or Senator Wheeler. And I'm sure we're all going to have the same questions, so don't hesitate to ask. All right. So if there are no further discussion, we'll now move forward to discussing any potential project recommendations in the of new construction, project investment in plant and information technology for the 2024-2026 biennium. All right, which would be, is that this, Liz?
So that's the project list.
Okay.
So that's a separate tab. So if anyone wants to discuss any projects within the specific project
All
list.
right. So that would be in the list of the, like Liz said, it's all the projects that have listed. We've reviewed, heard conversation, testimony for each one of the requested projects. And all that information is stored on the website if you need to go back and review any of it. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator.
I have a question maybe for staff and also discussion. I was looking through the construction project investment, so that's all these maintenance stuff, and I saw, and maybe I missed, but I saw all the different universities, but I am not sure where the CPE project, where their overall maintenance pool request was.
So that's a good question. CPE originally submitted a project in the system, and then when they testified, they clarified that that was an error, that I think it carried over from the previous biennium and it was previously funded. So CPE itself did not actually have any capital projects submitted, so in the final version. So it won't be on any of your project list here.
So they I thought they testified that they wanted us to do more again this year.
They testified about their overall recommendation for all post-secondary institutions and the asset preservation allocations that they recommend, but they themselves as an institution did not have.
Oh, right. That's what I was talking
Sorry.
about. The asset preservation pool that CPE wanted to do. Like last year we had the different universities ask for stuff, but then I don't think we ended up funding those individually. We just handed it to CPE for their formula. But I'm not sure where CPE's formula preservation pool is on this list.
I guess within each, let me find the page number for you, but within each university, let's see, they have their own specific,
Page 5.
page 5.
5 of 8, I think. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So we wouldn't be, or I don't know. I mean, either we go with CPE's formula or we just piecemeal each school.
Then there's
And I
page
haven't
1,
done the
6,
totals.
7. Yeah, page 6 and 7. Mhm. And
Yeah, I see that, Kentucky State Universities is represented on page 6 of 8 within the construction, protect, investment, and plant list. And then each university, I guess the board generally addresses that recommendation as a separate policy recommendation, and that's under the next tab within your, but yeah, the project list and ranking, that's a separate process, but it is also addressed as a policy recommendation. Director Hicks has a.
yes, sir.
Yeah, just to add to Senator Southworth. So one option would be, rather than to pick 9 asset preservation pool projects from the 9 institutions, and out of the 15 which we were being asked to rank, we could shift that decision over to the policy recommendation to say we support the concept of asset preservation pool for the institutions, and therefore not eat up 9 of your 15 ranked projects just by wanting to support the institution's asset preservation policy. So that's something I'm interested in doing.
Senator Southworth.
Well, I appreciate that. I think I'm going to do the same thing. But to clarify, last year, like at the very end of, or I keep saying last year, probably last round of this, but I remember the very end, we had gotten graphs and put together, and it was around this idea of funding maintenance with bond funds. And I like that everyone wants to, preserve things and make sure things are working right. And I know that we haven't done enough in that space, clearly by the number of needs that are coming to us. Mm-hmm. And the universities were a particular concern, just because there's a lot of them and there's a lot of buildings that go with all that. But last year's $700 million pool that we did, in our policy recommendation, we say, yeah, we believe in maintenance, but then we turned around and funded it 100% with bonds, which I have a huge issue with, because it doesn't make any sense to me how we're doing maintenance today. This stuff's going to crumble again in 10 years and the bonds come in 20 years and it ends up costing twice as much. So is there somewhere in the maintenance pool policies where we can say, maintenance really is where you want to be paying cash, not bonds? Mm-hmm. Is that in there, or
it is? So on page 8 under your last tab, you have the SCIP proposed content. So page 8 of that document, that's where the state agency maintenance pool policy recommendation begins, and it gives a brief historical view of the maintenance pool appropriations. And you can see in the 22-24 fiscal biennium, there was significantly an increase in general fund support. There was a widespread policy decision to support those projects with general fund cash financing versus bonds. So there is a statement in that paragraph after that states, the 2022 General Assembly adopted the widespread policy of supplanting the use of bond fund appropriations with traditional general fund cash financing. And I think we also there's another statement that says it's a top priority And the caption at the beginning also states, as such, despite its benefits, bond funding should not be used to the exclusion of traditional cash financing. So if you guys want to maintain that policy, we can do so, or, if you want to amend any of these statements, happy to do so.
Also, whenever we heard some of the testimony, there was quite a few. There was a lot of discussion about pass-through dollars, and so are any of those projects actually listed in this or on this list, or is that where it would show up under other fund sources?
I'm thinking pass-through and Director Hicks might be, I'm assuming that's grant loans benefits. Those are separate project categories than what is represented here. These are strictly new construction, renovation, or IT.
So those things that were discussed would not be on this list then?
Right.
Very good.
Yeah, they'll be listed, as proposed projects in the cumulative project listing at the end of the document, but they're not separately part of your project recommendations.
Senator Southworth, I like the discussion that, Mr. Hicks, I appreciate the conversation regarding the maintenance pools. Are there any other, tricks of the trade that would be like that we should consider, lumping things together besides just the asset pool?
I can't think of anything right off, but yeah, he's the expert.
And I would add that we were doing the same thing for maintenance pools. We've got a policy on that so that, Liz purposely kept the maintenance pools out of the list so that, but it's still a priority, but we're not picking projects out of it.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, Senator Southworth?
Well, I am seeing maintenance pools on the list in like each cabinet or agency has a maintenance pool. So how are we? I mean, I kind of started checking through things, and I guess, it's one of those things like, well, I don't know, do I really want to check that because it's important and we're probably going to do it anyway. So I don't know, how do you score this stuff?
Right, yeah, they are included as in the project list as they were submitted to the system, but if you guys, I guess, as a whole decide to not include those in your specific recommendations and otherwise address it as a group policy recommendation, I think that's kind of what Director Hicks is speaking to and how it's been done historically.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Senator Southworth.
I've got some other questions.
Sure.
I kind of wanted to throw in, since Director Hicks is here, I'd like to maybe throw one at him and see what happens. But I'm on the IT list. It's the Finance Administration Cabinet was in here asking for $3.5 million more for the EMARS upgrades. Or maybe Director Hicks, you or someone else, does anybody? I didn't feel like I had a whole clarity around what they wanted, and they said that it was new, I guess, things that we don't currently have in our EMARS. And I'd like EMARS to be amazing so that we can all grab whatever information we need quickly. But is this kind of, what exactly is this? And should I be prioritizing it pretty high? Because, I mean, they seem to be prioritizing it pretty high, but again, it comes to the Office of Controller and they only have one project, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah, I'll say this. It is not, the current system's not dependent upon new money for the upgrade that they're actually implementing right now, because they are implementing a $13 million project right now. I believe it was some other modules, and I'm trying to think if one of them was travel and some other things. So there were a few, you characterized it properly, which it was some new functionality, not necessary for the existing, but I can't recall off the top of my head, the specifics.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was new. I guess, are these new functions like would be nice functions, or are these like, wow, this would be game changing if we could just get all this on the same system?
I would say it's closer to the would be nice than it is to the game changer.
And I can share you the specific proposed project detail that's in our system. It has a little bit more of a narrative than what's available online. If that's useful to you, I can share that with the board.
Okay, that'd be nice. Madam Chair, I've got to follow up on another
Of
project.
course.
The construction maintenance list, PIP, on Finance Administration Cabinets, page 2 of this list that we have, the Excel sheet format list, and there says other fund type. There's a few projects here that say federal, but there's not actual under other fund sources amounts, and I'm wondering, are there matches here, grants, or what is this?
I'll double check on that. I can't recall offhand, but I'll be sure to get you the update on that. Can you? Okay, well, go ahead.
Good.
I thought it was an odd thing for federal funds, but I thought if there was a match, that makes it better, right?
Is that the case for all line items that say federal or just in that particular area?
All in finance, but no, for military affairs, those would be accurate.
Yeah, okay, good.
Madam Chair, another question.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just going through my laundry list here. Dam safety, reconstructions and repairs is on page 3. In tourism and arts and heritage, like the 5th thing down in their list. And they've got $5 million. But when I found elsewhere, we had hold on, where was it? We had more dams somewhere else. We were doing 22 million, I think. There you go. Is that on the new construction page? Yeah, state-owned dam repair is on the construction other sheet, page 1. That's the 22 million. So I guess I keep hearing about our dams, but I'm not really clear. Are these different dams or are they overlapping funds? Do we know? It was under the construction PIP list, which appears to be maintenance pools and so forth, and it's the 5th thing down under Department of Parks.
I can check with our respective analysts on tourism and arts and get clarity around which dams they have, I guess, responsibility over versus the Kentucky River Authority. And I guess energy and environment as well.
Energy and environment pool is one we've had for years, and it's to deal with, we categorize them from high hazard to medium hazard to low hazard. And it's for any state-owned dam. So parks having a specific item in here can be duplicative in the sense that dam at the state park could be part of the state-owned dam repair and has been in the past. So I think Liz is right. The question might be what the specificity of what Parks is asking for might be useful.
That's probably it. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Got another, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I found the next thing on my laundry list. This EKU aviation program. When I was out there last year discussing this with them, they had indicated, which they have, I mean, right now their teaching area is literally like a double wide.
That's correct.
And I think it's a great idea to get a little bit more space. They have bandwidth to be able to expand the program. So when we were discussing, though, I said, okay, well, how much are we talking for like this new building to go put out there near the basically right on the runway and stuff? And they said, well, we don't have a really solid number, but I said, just give me a ballpark. What are we even talking about? And they said, maybe like in the $20 million range. So I said, I think that's a reasonable thing that I would like to prioritize and stick on our list. And so now when they came, and I know there's inflation, but we're talking about $50 million, and it looks like so far they've raised $4 million toward the project. I don't know how much is in this phase. It looks like it may have expanded because it doesn't look like it's just inflation. And I'm just kind of wondering, one of the policy issues I've never been sure of on this board is when somebody hands us an ask, okay, we want $50 million for this thing. You know, where is there any space for us to say, can we break that up, or can we do a $25 million option? Or like, you know, we're basically going to give you $25 million if you can come up with a way to use it, but we don't have 50 today. But it's one of those chicken and egg things, because can they do what would be useful for 25, or is it throwing money to the wind in 2 years is going to come back right in the general fund anyway? I mean, so I don't know, but some of these projects, I remember last year we had U of L asking for 120 and they had 80 in private cash. And I was like, well, what bells and whistles can you get rid of? They said, oh yeah, we could build it for 80. We just wanted to see if we could get some more. I'm like, well, my goodness, you're in the wrong spot. We don't have extra money laying around, people. So, you know, some of these projects I would love to do, but maybe at a different scale.
I guess there's a challenge with that. I totally understand what you're saying. I guess there's a challenge with that, though. If you make it's like in stages, then there's a possibility that your stage, if you know, make it 1 through 3, there's a possibility that your stage 3 would never be funded. So I totally understand what you're asking, but I guess that we would have to weigh the risk to the project.
I guess also, what is stage 3? Because sometimes it's, we're going to build everything we need in stage 1. We're going to ask for stage 3 just so that they give us stage 1, you know, that whole game. So I don't know how much of this is, here's the bid we have versus here's our grand utopian wish list.
Right. You know, whenever I worked for UPS, we always called it the kamikaze projects. We always threw kamikazes out there. And so that's, you know, and that wasn't, you know, supposed to be, you know, negative or derogatory, but it's just how do you differentiate which ones are the kamikaze projects or which parts are the kamikaze stages? And that's the hard part. And I think that's really, hopefully this matrix will help us drive some of that out. I'm certainly hoping. But to your point, is there space in this project, in this committee, to only fund at a certain percentage?
It would be a new concept, but it's something, if you guys collectively agree, we could, you know, pursue something of that nature if there's interest in it.
Yeah, because it is the recommendation of this board, of this committee, what we want to do.
I would like to hear a little bit of input maybe from some of the veteran state employees on, you know, 20, 30 years ago, or even 10 or 15, just going back a little bit of history. When you get I mean, we all know it's happened, right? Make sure you ask for more than you want so you get less, right? But how does that work? Because here we're talking about an all or nothing approach. So did you all, whoever all is here from that era or any history, see that, and how did it work, and how do we recommend for that? Or does it all just wash out in the A&R committee, and so we're kind of pointless talking about it here?
Yes, please, Mr. Director Hicks.
Your last point's probably closest, which is at this point, right, we're to the point of the process where I kind of think less about the dollar value and more about the purpose and the scope, you know, of what's being done, like you just described at EKU, right? But in the budget process, both executive and the legislative, you then start, I won't say negotiating, but you start pursuing other information, such as what could be done with a dollar figure, or what does it cost to do just this portion or the scope of the project, one way or the other. So I kind of view this, your example, as I'm going to look at the purpose of the project more than at the dollar figure, and that this committee is making a recommendation to the decision makers, you know, around which projects kind of we rank highest. But I leave to the budget process what is the amount of money that's necessary.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
I think it's really important for us to do that. I mean, I'm kind of skipping down to the next section, but whenever we're looking at during the last iteration of this process, there was 25 billion that was requested, and this time it's 55 billion. So it's double of what was requested before, when there's really only about 200 more projects, which, of course, 200 doesn't mean anything. It's all about the scope and the size of those projects. And then, there was 7 billion the total cash need compared to 11.6 billion. So we've got a significant amount of more projects and a lot more expensive projects. So I think it's going to be very challenging for us to look at it from a dollar figure. Therefore, you really have to look at it from a project perspective. Because I think for me, the sticker shock was pretty high on some of these. Go to this 104. Okay. All right, if there's no other discussion, then we'll go down to the discussion of the project recommendations. So each member has been instructed to score 15 projects with each project category we just talked about. If there are any projects a member would like to publicly discuss, obviously we can open the floor for discussion. The intent of this meeting is truly to discuss and to answer any questions. Senator Southworth?
I just have one project I want to call attention to. I think everyone can agree probably on this. The Court of Appeals building had a really compelling argument, and I totally agree. And the cost is actually very reasonable compared to a lot of the other buildings we've seen. And so I think it's definitely going to be on my list. I think it should score well, but I think it is reasonable to call it out and say it'd be one of the top, maybe even top 10 that comes out of this whole thing.
Senator Wheeler?
Yeah, I would agree with Senator Southworth. I think that's a very necessary project, and I like the way they've gone about it by maximizing space that they already own to reduce the cost to the taxpayer. And I know Judge Thompson, the chief judge, is a very good public servant. I've known him for nearly 30 years, and he's always very frugal, and I'm sure that this is a well thought out project. Not to mention the health risks to the staff, I think that we need to all take into consideration with the mold and the other issues going on with that building.
I know whenever I was looking at the summary, I had some questions for Liz, specifically like that there's a different group project needs by area of government. And so there's some on the list that weren't there in 2021. And so, Liz, can you explain to us why some fell off and some were added, please?
Yes, I just rank these based on total project request, so from highest to lowest. So some dropped off, some were under 1%, and I just combined those into the other government agencies and identified them at the bottom.
Thank you. And then just to move a little bit forward, the last document in your packet includes draft sections and planned content of the capital plan documents. The project recommendation begins on page 5 and are largely unchanged from the previous 6-year capital plan. I would like to also open the floor for any discussion or questions about the 3-year policy recommendation. And then as we continue to move forward, yes, ma'am. Yes, Senator.
I was just going to come back to the cash versus bond funding for maintenance pools language, this one sentence, and I never did find the other, but in the box, at the bottom of the box, it says, as such, despite its benefits, bond funding should not be used to the exclusion of traditional cash funding. And I thought I would like to move that we maybe adjust that sentence to say as a, like, strong recommendation to use cash funding, not necessarily this word exclusion, because it's almost like as long as you throw in $1, then we can go ahead and take all these bonds, and that's not really the focus. I think the focus that I would like us to say is maintenance funds should be primarily funded with cash, or the goal should be complete funding with cash. That's we always make our goals, right? And then we try to live up to them. But that to me should be where we go, and then and that also gives the idea of maintenance comes first, that we do have currently already in our policy. We pay for our maintenance first, and then when we have leftovers, then we look at what else bells and whistles we can do, and then we look at new projects, taking on new bonds and whatnot, right? But I think maintenance comes first, goes with, so that's where you put your cash first. I didn't give a great language, but that's my motion. Does that make sense?
Yes, we could say something like the board encourages continued use of traditional cash financing as done in the 2022-2024 budget, or
I don't recall us using it. I guess right now you can see the overall here. It is more in this maintenance pool appropriations, but it didn't come through on that CPE thing. The CPE thing, I don't know where that is, but it was 100% bond funded.
right. I guess the asset preservation isn't included in the maintenance pool appropriations, and that's addressed in that preceding policy recommendation, page 7, and that's where they talk about it there. So we could potentially modify language there if you want to, I guess, specifically speak to how they finance, or CP has recommended how they would like to. We could potentially amend that language in that section if you want to get on the asset preservation part.
Yeah, can I amend my motion to put the similar language, whether you call it asset preservation or maintenance pool? It's kind of either the same thing. But maybe I'm slicing hairs here, or maybe this is. I'm not sure.
Yes, Director Hicks.
Yeah, just on a couple of things. On the one thing that the Commonwealth has never put in place, I'll say, a dedicated funding stream for capital maintenance. We have the Capital Construction Investment Income Account, which is dedicated for that purpose, but it is subject to the variations of interest rates and balances. And I'll give you an example. In the budget we're in right now, we literally had no capital construction investment income in the first year of the biennium because of mark-to-market requirements, right? We literally had negative interest income. But in the second year, we kind of returned to our usual amount. So one reason we turned to some bond funds for maintenance pools, there were two reasons. One, because we didn't have a dedicated cash stream, and secondly, there are some maintenance projects, because we look at them one at a time, that have a 20-year useful life. And so we started putting some bond funds into maintenance pools with the intention of financing, an HVAC replacement, a roof replacement, some of which can last that long. So just to let you know the history, I prefer the language that Liz mentioned, which is to split the baby a little bit, that considers the fact that you shouldn't debt finance all your agency maintenance pools, yet there is some usefulness to having bond funds and a recognition that in the budget we're in now, and if you look on page 8, you'll see the general fund value for the current biennium of being 143.8. I think that's kind of a recognition that we had the funds to do it, and it was a good use of cash, not debt, for some of these. So I'm agreeing with the tone of the idea that you shouldn't rely completely on debt. but I'm not all the way to no reliance, because the practicality is we don't have a dedicated revenue source of size. And there are also some maintenance pool projects that kind of meet a test of bonds. So I think adjusting this maybe to kind of acknowledge the approach that the budget took in the current biennium, because there was a greater emphasis on cash.
Yeah, I'll call that a friendly amendment.
Thank you.
I guess that's a second on his amendment if we're going official here.
All right.
So, yeah, I'll second his friendly amendment. Does that work?
Any discussion, any opposition? I'll go there first before we, does everybody agree? All right. Okay, that sounds good. All right. I think the other, yes, Director Hicks.
We're still on the policy recommendations. Want to address the one on page 5. This has been a long-standing policy of this board about the Budget Reserve Trust Fund. We've had recent significant occurrences, right? The Budget Reserve Trust Fund is at $3.7 billion today due to 3 straight years of billion-dollar surpluses. So the wording in here says replenish, right? And so I think we're not at a replenish situation any longer. We may be, another 20 years from now, but we're not there now. So maybe we just take out the word replenishing, and it maintains
maintain.
the idea that it's an important thing, that's my only suggestion, is to we just modernize it a little bit for the current circumstance.
Second.
I agree. Any discussion, any opposition to that? All right. If everyone's in agreement, then we'll adopt that as well. Thank you.
I guess in relation to the maintenance pool policy recommendation, on page 10, project recommendations, projects to be financed from state funds, maintenance pools are also addressed in this section. And the previous statement was the board recommends that maintenance pool appropriations for all agencies be increased. And I changed it to maintain due to the increase in general fund support. That might be a matter for discussion, how you all want to word that, if you want to keep it as maintained or continue to increase.
Where exactly are we?
We're talking about the first sentence there on state agency maintenance pools for construction needs.
Correct. Yeah. Page 10, under the heading State Agency Maintenance Pools for Construction Needs, there's a bold sentence there.
You're saying that in this draft it says maintained now as the first word on line 2 of that paragraph, and you say that previously it had said increased, and you went ahead and put maintained, but you're wondering if we want to say like maintained or
Correct.
increased.
Yeah. If you want to confirm that change.
I'm fine with it.
Okay. All agree? Liz, I also noticed that seems like there's an additional sentence here, in a capital agency, state agencies, in their 2024, 2026 capital plans, state agencies have identified the need for approximately $694.8 million for maintenance pools over the 6-year plan, and $300 million in the first biennium. That $300 million in the first biennium is new to this document. Okay, is there?
I think I actually moved that. Previously, Sean had provided, I think, an additional page or two for discussion in terms of maintenance pools, and she had identified. I just thought the historical information would be, helpful
Would be
in
helpful.
assessing that. But yeah, happy we can move it to the other section, leave it where it is, or.
No, I think it's good. I mean, I like historical information. I just thought that it needed to be discussed. Sure. Okay, thank you. Okay. Highlighted anyway. Pointed out. One of the other things that that I thought was very beneficial, of course, if you go back to the policy recommendation, the budget reserve trust fund, the table where it talks about the BRTF, that table is to me was very, very beneficial. And I thought that it would also be beneficial for me to go have historical information regarding the amount of requests that were being made. As we talked about before, almost twice as many in dollar figures are being requested this year compared to the last iteration in 2021. So do other people think that it would be beneficial just to have some historical data regarding how many projects in a table format, how many projects are being requested and what those price tags are? I think that 55 billion kind of concerns me. If we walk in with a recommendation of whatever the recommendation was last year, but now we walk in with double that, I think that a table to be able to explain that would be beneficial. Senator Southworth.
I also think on that table, not only you would want to put how much was requested, but then how much was the total that actually got funded. So we can kind of see over time, are we starting to lag behind? Are we starting to catch up? I mean, right now we're just anecdotally talking about it and hoping that Director Hicks doesn't lose his memory.
That's right. Yeah. Or get a better job offer somewhere else, right? Wait a second, stop. We need you. Right. Yeah, or, the risk of, somebody looking at the price tag and going, that committee's out of control, Right.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. But we can start working on that and see what it looks like. Thank you. All right. Yes, ma'am. Everybody's nodding their head yes. So yes. All right, so are we at where are we at, Liz? Have we already done the proposed content organization? All right. So we're at we've had general discussion. And unless there are any other questions, concerns, comments, we are ready to adjourn. Our next meeting is scheduled for 1 p.m. on Wednesday, October 11th in the same meeting room to perform a vote on the final 2024-2030 statewide capital improvement project document. Of course, attendance is strongly encouraged to ensure that we have a quorum for this action to meet the statutory delivery date of November 1st. So our next order of business, though, is by September 20th to provide our recommendation. Okay? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion. Great. Thank you all.